Hello,
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I've had a good week.
Have you? Good. I'm
Yes. Yeah.
glad. I'm glad this finds you well. So this is going out to the IM project,
Great.
potentially being circulated to some people in your network as well with Pyramid Park, which we'll find more about in a moment. But do you want to give people just a minute's very brief kind of who are you?
Sure. Well, my name is Pete. I go under the artist name of Pyramid Park, and I'm an independent artist, which means I work most of my time in this room here, my little studio slash garage, and I work as a musician. So I write songs, create music, used to tour until this year, and now create content as well. And I'm also working on a book. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's very exciting.
Mm.
We became friends quite a long time ago now.
I
We went to
know.
church together,
We
and
did.
um, I am Heather. For anyone who doesn't know that, I run
Hi,
the I
Heather.
Am Project, which is a ministry around identity. I normally do a lot of sessions and visiting groups and things, but less so at the moment. And
Mm.
alongside that, we have an Instagram and a blog, and I do a lot of writing and different things. Pete and I met in Cambridge about a decade ago, which is mad.
Is that
And
really that
now,
long? Wow.
yeah, because we're old now, and now I actually help Pete with some social media bits on his musician project, and we
Yeah.
just wanted to have a conversation today about that process. We're both creative, and we're both putting things out into the world, and we have lots of chats all the time about where creative stuff comes from, how we turn our experiences into creativity, and what putting it out there into the world is like, and what comes back from that, and that sort of thing. So, really, you just get to listen in on a chat with me and Pete today, and we hope that it's helpful in some way. And we'd love for you to be part of the conversation as well. So, Pete, firstly, do you want to what do you make, and I guess where was the kind of what where's the starting point that came from? What triggered you to start creating things in the first place?
Sure. Well, I do make music, but I
Mhm.
think as time goes on, I make much more than music because really, if you're going to be an artist in any shape or form, you are creating a whole body of work in various formats. So, yes, I am a songwriter and a singer and a guitarist, but I also create things like vlogs because I have a YouTube channel where I vlog from
Mm.
and writing content eventually for a book, but I've been writing content just generally, and trying to write short, engaging content that people can connect with. So there's a whole body of work making music videos, coming up with ideas for that. There's a whole body of work, artwork. I mean, the list can
Yeah.
go on. Anything really that I want to do, I feel I can do as an independent artist because I've just got to find a way to learn the skills or find the skillful people around me. And so I guess what it started out for me was I grew up in a very small town in Norfolk. Not a lot was going on there. I still don't think much is going on there. Um, but what it did is it gave me loads of time to be able to create. And so I learned several instruments, but mainly the violin when I was growing up, and then later the guitar. I used to songwrite in my bedroom, and I also loved art. So I did art, GCSE, A level, and abs- absolutely loved the whole thing of creating. But the thing I loved the most about art was actually not the final piece that you had to do, but all the workshop kind of books. You had to create a whole massive journal of your process to get to that point. And I really
Mm.
enjoyed that element of the work because it was smaller and it could be messy and you could just do whatever you wanted. Whereas the final piece kind of had to have some structure. So for me, I loved that. And I loved English as well. So combining kind of English, history, art, and music together is pretty much what I do for a day job now.
That's really cool. It's mad that for what could you know, if you were with a record label, what could just be a career as a musician,
Sure.
as an independent artist, you've had to learn and wanted to learn so much about different skills and industries. And
Yeah.
you know, I've seen you pull together album art cover sheets and designing, like drawing stuff for your Patreon, and
Uh-huh.
you know, writing lyrics, and there's so many different skills involved in that. And I think knowing your albums a little bit, you can almost see that threaded through, like your
Uh-huh.
they're kind of like a journal just laid out on the paper, isn't it? Or laid out in,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
And has that been an intentional thing as you've kind of been creating albums over the years?
I've always enjoyed the art side of things. I think
Mm,
the hardest part about all of this is just organizing everything.
yeah.
And while I am an organized person, which is quite rare. I don't know how you are. You organized?
Yeah, I think I am now. And actually with my own, there's a need, I think, to be organized with your own project, and
Yeah.
because there's definitely a sense of, if you don't do it, it doesn't happen.
Uh-huh.
So you have to stay on top of it. So Trello for me has been a lifesaver,
Yeah.
and
We both use that for my stuff, don't we?
we do, yeah. And actually there's the motivation there to be organized for my own things and for projects that I'm excited about. So yeah, so organization is easier to get into the habit of doing, I think, when I'm excited
Yeah.
about a project.
Yeah, I mean, I find personally, if I'm not careful, I will organize everything
Yeah.
and not do the actual art itself. So when you're talking about like the different elements of each project, art front covers are really important to me. But I'm really open to what the graphic designer or the photographer comes up with. So because I've worked pretty much from, I did an album pre-Pyramid Park days called I Hear Your Voice, and pretty much from, which was 2014, so it's 6 years ago.
Gosh.
And yeah, I know. And from then until now, I've had the same guy doing photography for me, Phil Hearing. And Phil's been a lifesaver because not only is he a really good friend, but he's somebody who I find inspiration from by just hanging out with him, because he's a creative's creative. And because of that, I'm always like, he'll often message me and say, hey, have you seen this? Or you need to be doing this, or, you know, this is a new trend now, blah, blah, blah. And he knows that I would just jump on it because I really trust his judgment. And you know, and he'll give me really direct feedback. But what's been really nice about that is he kind of knows I'm really awkward when it comes to music videos and photography. I don't always find easy either. But he knows how to get me in the right zone. And that kind of collaboration has really helped me to be able to work with other creatives, I guess, to create the right art for each project. So I Hear Your Voice was a very personal kind of reflection kind of project. Vulnerability was a new direction, where it was the first Pyramid Park album, so that had to have a real statement. And the designer Cameron really helped me with that, to be able to create an iconic piece that I still use for merch. And then this project, Not an Island, in 2020, was an album that really we were trying to bring what somebody once said to a guy who works with me. It sounds like 80s meets 2020. And so we were like, well, how do we get that in art, and how do we just try and change up the image a little bit? So you're always yeah, and I love researching all that kind of stuff. I'm not a big researcher generally, but when it comes to art, I find, because I studied it, I've got a real passion for it.
You've got that kind of foundation of knowledge, and also a passion. Yeah, yeah. When you were creating, kind of beginning the creative process with your albums, did you have a sense of which direction they were going to go down, in terms of, you know, this album, I think you're right, is very 80s meets 2020. Did you know that going into the process?
So what you have before you start production, you normally try and put together what we call a reference list. And that's a bunch of tracks that you think, right, I love something about this song, or the tone of the drums here, or the guitar parts, whatever it might be. And I had a kind of three main artists that I pulled from and their projects on that project. And I just said to Ian, the producer, like, if there's one song that we always go back to, it's this one song. And we need to keep that as the kind of central point. We can go anywhere we want creatively, but as long as it somehow goes back to this kind of tone and feel and sound, then this is what I want. So I've become a lot more focused on that as time's gone on. So Not an Island was by far the most deliberate in terms of sound, and also sounds we didn't want, so there would be instruments that we wouldn't use. And that limitation really helped create what I think is probably my best work. I don't know how you found that in like your sphere, but
well, it's interesting. I was just thinking about how it's almost like a mission statement that you go in with of, we don't know what this looks like practically, but we know at the core of it what this album is going to be. We know the shape that's right at the center. And even in my actual day job, I do children's ministry with a church, and behind my desk I've got a list of values for the children's ministry that I've put together. And it's things that we care about and values that we want to instill in our team and our leaders, and very particular kind of directions that we want to go down. And so when I'm developing the work or thinking about new projects, I look at that list and I think, does it fit into these values? And I guess that's the same thing that we're talking about in terms of starting a creative process. You've got your list of values and key parts of the work, and then when ideas are coming up, because I'm sure you're working with other people as well, and there's a lot of ideas flying around and you're trying stuff out, but there's definitely that sense of, does it fit in with this key thing? And I think for the I Am project, that's been really important. The work's developed a lot over the years, and we've kind of created different things. We create a lot online, actually, so a lot for Instagram and blogs and written devotional stuff that goes out, and also sessions for leaders to take on and run with people. And I guess when we're developing new things to go out, the value that's at the core of it is, does this point people towards God? And demonstrate what it means to live a full life with him. So we're the kind of tagline that's at the center of the I Am project is that we're about living outrageously and loving outrageously for the glory of God. And there's that sense of fullness of life. And I think, so that is threaded all the way through things that we do. And it's really exciting then to be able to play with different ideas and to think about those things. And what it means actually is, if part of the creative process is you sit down at your desk and you really try and write something, and you think that you should write something, but it's hard. You haven't gone in with that same sense of inspiration. And there's definitely been days when I've got up Instagram and I've gone to write something because we should put a post up because that fits into the schedule, and I've stopped myself and I've thought, this isn't coming from the right place. It's not that it's not true, but this is content for the sake of content, for the sake of building a platform, rather than content that is aimed at pointing people towards God. And it's been really interesting to have that little checkpoint in the back of my mind. It's interesting how those kind of flow together. And it's been it's been fantastic for me to see your journey through I Hear Your Voice, and then Vulnerability, and then Not an Island, the latest album. There has been a real growth over those albums, and I think one of the things about creative work is we really see you in all of your work. And I think the same is true of the I Am project, is you can't separate yourself from what you're putting out there. And I guess with your albums, we've seen you grow up in a sense through the albums. Do you look back and see that kind of a younger Pete in Not an Island, and that journey, I guess?
I think it's different projects for different periods of time as well.
Yeah.
From a production point of view, definitely growing up, definitely developing. I think I've become more comfortable with being honest in my songwriting. So I've always kind of had a tendency to just say it as it is in my songs rather than being cryptic. So I wrote a song, for example, called Die to Myself, which I still think about quite fondly. But there's other songs on that first project that I feel, yeah, they kind of said stuff, but they could have gone a little bit deeper. Whereas Vulnerability, which was the second album that I did, was much more vulnerable. But I think the final one, and not the final one, but the next one, 2020's Not an Island, has felt like this is actually more vulnerable than Vulnerability. And even now I'm writing a bunch of songs for a new project, and again the goal is to be as raw and honest as possible, but at the same time I have these two kind of, you were saying you have phrases and things to keep you kind of on track. I have two things that I kind of say relatively regularly to myself, and one of them is worship to the world, which basically means I want people to encounter God's presence, whoever they are, wherever they are, and they may not know it's happening to them. And that's what I would love to see happen through the songs. And so I pray that, every song will carry something that causes people to stop and listen and encounter something of God's presence. And the second thing is, I feel my songs build a bridge between kingdom and culture. And I think that for me helps. I mean, I've always known that's probably where I sit best with my music, but I've become really comfortable with that. And so I will deliberately try not to do things to appease a Christian crowd, and almost not be provocative for the sake of being provocative, because I kind of hate that. I think it's not the best way to live, but like not being afraid to, break down some stereotypes or say some things that might make people a little bit uncomfortable. Or make me feel uncomfortable. And because, being a Christian, there is a culture around you that if you're not careful, and I've certainly been like this, you can just lose a part of your soul, not as in like, lose your salvation, but lose a part of your individuality because you're just trying to please other people. And it's a very difficult line to walk, because you want to honor people and serve people, but you also are called to be you in the world, and there's only one of you. And so I think I'm becoming a little bit more comfortable with just like creatively expressing who I am, and being okay with the people who won't like what I do, or will judge me for what I do, or misunderstand what I do, and have their own opinion about it. And I guess that's art, isn't it? You're not going to be somebody, the art that one creates is not going to be the art that everyone will love. And I think that's the beauty of art, is that it's in the eye of the beholder, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And I think the thing is that it's not the job of art to for you to like it or agree with it, or I think it always makes me think when people criticize movies or books because one of the key characters just wasn't likable, or was full and rounded and had parts of their character that are difficult.
Mm.
And that can kind of switch people off from a movie, because you want someone that you're completely on their team. But actually, I think the parts of art that challenge people are almost more valuable than the parts that are aesthetically pretty and designed for you to like it, and you have to be brave, I think, as an artist, to put stuff out that people aren't necessarily going to like and agree with straight away, but that will sit with people and take them on a journey.
There's
And
something about, like,
yeah,
we used to always say in the studio, like, it needs to just sound darker. It's got to have a darkness to it. And what we didn't mean like it had to be evil. It was just like it has to have more grit to it. And maybe there's a lyric. So lyrically, I really work hard these days to not write what is so typically Christian in worship songs. And so a phrase we'll use in the studio is, it sounds too Christian. Like, how's it going to engage with someone who's not Christian? It sounds too Christian. So how can we break that and still say it, but say it in a way that is like, oh, that was interesting, or that was a bit strong. For me, that I take real pleasure in trying to find an alternative way of saying something, which maybe in the past I just didn't really think about deeply enough.
Do you think, because you are taking people on a journey through your music, and you're challenging different things, are those things part of a journey that you've been on yourself before, or kind of through an experience?
All of the above. But I think songs have the most power when you really engage in the moment of your life. And you can write from the past, and I have written songs from the past, but the songs that really seem to, or you can you can write something from someone else's story. So I've got a song called Bitterness, which is not really my story, but all of us have experienced bitterness. And I can think of a number of occasions straight away when I say that word, of when I have had to really work through bitterness in my own life. But it's a story of someone else who, and this is what I love about collaborating, and something what you touched on about, like, the quality of content, where this lady in New York wrote this poem, and it was an incredible poem, but the bit I loved the most was the first line. It said, "This root of bitterness has so many flavors." And I'm like, wow, that is a great first line of anything, like a book, a poem, whatever. And I contacted her and just said, hey, can we work together on this? Because I've really been impacted by some of what you said, and I'd love to write a song about it, because it got to me. And then she said, well, yeah, I'm a musician as well. I'd love you to. And here's the story. And when I heard the story, I was like, wow, okay, now I really have to get this right as a song, and really honor your journey and make you kind of proud by writing about it as vulnerably and honestly as you've shared your story with me. So that's when I think that's an occasion where I've written from another angle, perhaps, but generally it's my own experiences. Some, I know this sounds really weird, but some songs just come to you, like, when you're really inspired you just feel inspired when you're doing a body of work, whether it's writing a book, or you may have experiences where you just feel there's a flow. And there's definitely other times when it's just like grind. And I always find when there's a flow, you just have to maximize it, go with it, and don't question it too much. And get it out of you somehow. And tidy up the loose ends later.
That's the thing, you edit it later, and the worst thing you can do is try and edit yourself along the way, because it completely puts a stopper on that. You're right.
And that sometimes is the best work, that's kind of unedited, raw, and all of the stuff is on the surface.
And I think when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and to write in that place, it's going to touch people who have been through journeys and are in a similar place, or haven't quite reached that point yet. So you've got a song called Father Father, and I know that is a really powerful song for you and has come out of a particularly important experience. And I think it touches so many people who have been through even slightly different journeys, but feeling the same. So it's about the loss of your father and how God steps in and is that father for the fatherless. And I'm sure there are people who have been through the same thing, and that song has given them a language and touched them really significantly in that place. But I think for me, it speaks into feelings of loneliness, and it speaks into feelings of being abandoned or needing care. And I think your vulnerability in that has meant that people who are engaging with your work can go to that place too, and be vulnerable with it. Is that something you've kind of heard from people along the way, that people are engaging with your work in that way?
Yeah, I mean that song, just to back up a tiny bit,
Yeah.
I lost my dad when I was 11 to cancer, and we found out 3 weeks before, and within a very short period he died. And I had an encounter with God, which I can only say was supernatural. And I remember being in the room where he died an hour or so afterwards. The doctor was there certifying his death, and I heard a voice in my head, and the voice said, you can choose me to be your father or reject me, you choose. And I'd never heard that voice before. I didn't realize in articulating it that was the voice of God, but I knew it in my soul that it was God speaking to me. And I remember just praying back, God, I need you to be my father, please help. And probably one of the most powerful prayers I've ever prayed in my life, because I had this somehow understanding that he was there and willing to work with me and help me in this. But he had almost given me this choice even at 11 years old. I think that's amazing. So I've always wanted to write about that experience, because I feel like that for me sums up my life message. Of course, I'd love to have a dad, but I'm also aware I had 11 really good years in my life, which is a lot more than some people have. And the conversations I have with people tend to go from those who have lost a loved one, especially a father figure or a dad, in recent times, through to those who have never known what it is to have a loving father. So they may have had a dad, but he was abusive, or they may have had the experience of never knowing their dad, or their dad walking away and not wanting a relationship. And those I can picture one or two of those people that I've talked to, sometimes through a translator or interpreter, because it was in a different nation. But
Wow.
there's something about, they don't have to say much, and you know how they feel and they know how you feel, and there's just something of a oneness in that moment, that God knew that you would be here today to hear that song, just like God knew that I would be in this place when I need to hear stuff from other people. And I think that's the work of the kingdom, isn't it? How God sets up appointments with people, his children and others who need to hear his voice. And if you're willing to share it in some way. And the weirdest thing was, I wanted to write that song for a very long time. And I did write songs along those lines, but none of them connected like Father, Father. And I remember it came really fast as a song. In terms of like a couple of hours one evening, pretty much start to finish. And I knew in that moment I had it, but it took years before I got to that place of being able to articulate and get the right melody and, say it so simply that I knew, okay, this is actually something to share with people. So yeah, you're right. And I think our stories matter so much. And if we can find a way, I think what God loves to do in our lives is use our creativity, use our journey, package it somehow into something that is consumable, like a song or a book or whatever. Not that that's, you know what I mean by that. And then when that thing is shared, whether it's a story or a song or whatever, then he can move off the back of that. And it's just the avenue to open up hearts, I guess.
I love that. And that's the really great thing about music, I guess, is that it's not um you're not writing in a vacuum, you know, you're not just writing for you. You're um yeah, you're writing stuff with the aim that other people will connect with it.
Yeah.
Do you remember the time when you kind of transitioned, when you made that jump from having your own stuff that you'd been writing in your bedroom and creating, um, and started putting it out into the world? What do you remember when that happened?
Yeah, I do. I used to, yeah, there's several elements to it, I guess. I'm
Yeah.
trying to work out what element to share, but yeah, there comes a point when you've been playing live for a little while where you're like, well, I could just keep writing songs and playing them live, but
Mm.
maybe I need to actually put them down somehow. And I wasn't any good at recording. I'm still not that great at it. And I just had a friend who believed in me enough to just demo 3 tracks, and then I'd send those 3 tracks to promoters, and then they would either book me or not. And then I realized after a while, actually, I need to have something to, all these other artists have got stuff. So I've created an EP, which is no longer with us, thankfully, because it's not very good. But there are 5 tracks from my very early gigging days, and it's rough as anything.
It's got a picture of sunglasses on the cover.
No, so there's one before that.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Yeah, and even that one though, the sunglasses, what it's 3D glasses on it, and
Yeah.
that for me was the moment when I started to think, okay, I'm going to now. I think my songwriting game was pretty good, but my production and vocal game wasn't.
Sure.
So the songs actually had something about them, some of them anyway, but the quality wasn't there. And I had a little way to go before I could match those two together. But yeah, that was a moment when I thought, hang on a minute, there's a message in some of this stuff. I started getting bigger gigs from that. And
Yeah.
having it's really weird, but having something to give people or sell people adds value to what you do. And suddenly people take you a lot more seriously. It's weird, even though pretty much nothing else had changed.
It's
Would you say the same with like, okay, so
yeah.
I'm learning from you about books, and
Yes.
one day we'll write a book, finish it.
Oh, mate, it'll be so good.
But you've written a book, and we've chatted
I
about this a
have.
bit. What's it called again?
It's called Tell Me Who I Am.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting journey. That was,
Why did you choose to do a book?
well, I um I've always loved writing. I love um I've journaled for years and years and years, and the I Am project really has come out of that place. So um you know, if you've read the I Am Project blog, you've basically read the inside of my journal, which is mad. And I think a book was kind of something that I had in mind that I would love to do, and it was always a goal, but it always seemed so far out there, you know. And I think we perceive I think sometimes we can perceive art as being really difficult to create, you know,
Yeah.
music even, you know, there might be people who are thinking, oh, I'm never going to record an album, or I'm never going to, you know, live up to that standard, so why even try? And I think for me it was that sense of I couldn't fathom putting a book out into the world. And then I'd been running the I Am project for maybe 3 or 4 years and writing a lot, and I really grew in my kind of writing style and my ability over that time. And I was sharing a lot of my story and other people's story, and people were really connecting with it. I think that was one thing that triggered me um, into thinking that it would be a good thing to put a book out there. Is people were really engaging with the stuff
Yeah.
that we were putting up online, and it was really, really helping. So then a few wild things happened in my life, and I had a time of cutting back on work, and personally I was in a really tricky place in life actually, but faith wise I was just talking to God all day about stuff and writing so much, and over that time I started shaping it into chapters. And the product that we ended up with was so Tell Me Who I Am is a self-published book with 10 chapters, I think, and each chapter is
I love how you say
I think it was a while ago now. No, it's 10 chapters, and each chapter is based around the topic of a session of the I Am Project course, which I teach. So it kind of works as something that runs alongside the course, or something that stands alone and you can read it, and it's full of biblical stuff and thoughts and stories, and so having something real and physical in the world is so valuable. I put that book into people's hands all the time, and it's so amazing to have a physical product that you can pass to someone and say, read this. I guess
like you're saying, like, I will often give away an album just to whoever's listening, throw it out to the crowd or whatever, and there's something about sowing seeds into people's lives like that that's really like it adds value to people, as well as like it's good for you as the creator to do that.
For sure. There's a story that comes to mind that is a really significant time in the I Am Project. So we went to Bristol and did an event.
I might talk about this.
An event. No, it was a really interesting learning curve for me in terms of what it means to put an event like that together. So we went down and hired a space, and I think Jess did it at the wrong time, and like whatever happened, but two people showed up. And it was a guy and his mum.
The three of us in the car.
And it was nuts. It was such a strange evening, but as soon as they arrived, I mean, we were in quite a small space and it was quite intimate, and it was just a lovely evening, and I saw exactly what God was doing from the moment that guy arrived, because he came in and he'd heard your music on Spotify or through a blog or something like 2 weeks before that, and had really connected with your stuff. He was from, I think, a Christian family, but was really struggling and had difficulties and mental health stuff going on himself, and had really connected with your music, and then had Googled Pyramid Park, Bristol, just on the off chance that you were near there, and then this event came up, so he came with his mum, and that guy got a private gig with Pyramid Park, like, and the impact that had on him was huge. And he got an album and a vinyl. We just threw things at him. He had all this stuff, and he from what he was saying, I think the songs had given him a language to express something really deep that he was feeling, and that was then a really significant ministry moment of being able to speak into his life. And I can imagine that bigger gigs for you are just that on a bigger scale. You're able to kind of connect with people and meet them where they're at, really.
It's really challenging when you're playing live, because some gigs just become gigs, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. And I'm aware that some gigs are just there. We come in, we play the set, and we go, and people might buy some merch, we might have some conversations, but it's just a gig. And then there are times when you have moments, even whether it's in the gig itself or the conversation afterwards where it has so much more significance, and you just don't know when that's going to happen. Like you could play a
Yeah.
massive event and nothing happens, and then you have something like that in Bristol and there's this incredible exchange. I do remember one place in Slovakia, my only time to Slovakia. I'd love to go back sometime. And again, it was Father Father, and I normally get off the stage, jump down, and play with the people, just completely
Mm.
acoustic. And the people gathered round. They didn't really know what was going on, and the sound engineers were freaking out. And it was a great moment. I love that. And basically, I played the song, and they started singing it back to me. I think the words might have been on the screen, but they didn't know it at all. They all got their phones out, waving them around like you do for quiet songs and stuff. But what was special was, as I was playing it, I kind of felt I was one with these people. And I can't really explain it other than we were in it together in this moment. And I really had this incredible surge of, I guess, love for these
Mm.
people, and oneness and intimacy, even though I didn't know them at all. And it was incredible how just a moment like that for me was life changing. Often you're giving out all the time, but actually when you do something like that, you actually get back as well. And so there are definitely times where you have those incredible moments with God, people, and the world collides. And when I do that, people say, I love it when you do that, because it just breaks down the barrier of the stage and the people.
Yeah.
And that's never really the reason I do it, is just to really place emphasis on that song more than anything else. But I've realized that that song breaks barriers and the action breaks barriers, and so there is this kind of sense of oneness.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing to see as well, of course.
And we've got such an incredible opportunity to engage with the humanity of people, and to engage with people on that level of, um
we're all broken in some way, and we all
yeah,
need
and even art is experienced on an individual level. You're writing a song and it will go out to however many thousand people, but ultimately it's one person hearing that song, and it's one person playing it, and it's a conversation between two, and that's so powerful. Have you learned any lessons or experienced any kind of pitfalls of putting your work out into the world? Anything along the way?
Yeah, plenty. That's a very big question. I would say, it always takes longer than what you think. Like from a very practical point of view, you think, oh, we can do this by this time. I am an optimist generally when it comes to this stuff, and I ram stuff in, and I'm like, hang on a minute, this is just not possible. I've also learned to, when I'm traveling, particularly, to work while I'm traveling rather than use that time to work at home. So I've got a young family, and when I'm at home, I really want to be at home. And when I'm traveling, because I'm away sometimes several nights, that if I'm traveling part of that time, why can't I use it to work? So I try and make sure that I'm really deliberate with the time that I have. Obviously, if I'm exhausted, then I'm not going to work. But and I think whenever you put out a project, you always have a bunch of things where you think, oh, I could have done that better. So releasing singles, this time round, I released a bunch more singles than what I did for my last project. I've tried to crowdfund for bigger projects because people won't necessarily get behind a single release campaign, but they will get behind an EP or an album. So there's things like that. And I think just generally, from a bigger perspective, is to surrender what you have. I think this year, COVID has probably taught me more than any year before. I probably hold too tight to what I call the business, of Pyramid Park, and I need to hold it loosely and surrender it to God regularly and trust him to be able to help when I need help, because it's not easy. It's not, I find out you're not taught in school to go and have a career in music, let's put it that way, or be a creative. It's just not a financially viable model in the world that we live in, but it is also, because things are changing now, the likes of Patreon and everything else, you know, so that it is possible. So I'm learning, and I'm also learning, like, there's always a way, you just have to find the path. And so you may have experienced this, I certainly have. More doors are closed to you than opened. And sometimes you think, oh, well, it would be great if I went to this event, played here, did this, and it will result in this. But I'm learning that that just doesn't happen. Sometimes an amazing opportunity comes out of nowhere. I've had times when I've knocked on the same door 3 or 4 years in a row, and then eventually it's opened. But there have been other times when that door is never going to open for me. And
it's so easy to get discouraged by that. You know, you can kind of, because in our world, that's what success is. It's, you know, having access to lots of opportunities and being seen in different places. But we kind of, it's kind of a different story. You have to trust that you're going to have the right opportunities and that God's going to open the right doors. And the opportunities that don't seem like they're going to be the significant ones often turn out to be the really important ones, like you're saying about, you know, you're having conversations with the right people, or you're, I guess, even in terms of developing your career, you know, you meet people who then go on to be managers, or people who get you excited about a new project, or, you know, and you don't know when that's going to happen. That's so good.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many more things I could say probably, but I think if you're wanting to go down the independent route as a musician or a creative in some way, there are tools out there, but you've got to be prepared to slog it out for a while and find your voice, find your message, and then build your following very gradually. But you want to build it in a real quality way rather than having just loads of stuff happening. You want to just know your people and give them what they want, I guess, and then keep building that. So yeah, there's just a few thoughts anyway.
No, that's so good.
Whether you relate at all.
Absolutely. I think for me, I remember really early on finding it so weird that, you know, and the same is true of music, I think, you can put out, you know, the amount of effort that you're putting into those early projects, and it feels like nobody's, you know, engaging with the, you know, and a small following, I think, I mean, you know, everyone starts with a small following, and it can be so discouraging to just put stuff out over and over again, because you kind of can't see where it's going. But what I found is, well, that is reaching people at that stage, you know, and the people who are engaging with it then will still be with you 10 years down the line, and they will tell you that they've had that journey with you. And so that early work is really important. But also there's something in needing to be consistent with it, and to you have to kind of put the slog in, and sometimes it sucks and sometimes it's fun, and you just have to keep on going through that, and then eventually something clicks. And you know, the magic of the internet is now, if someone searches Pyramid Parker on Spotify, they get your back catalogue of everything that you put in that slog. So it matters, but I think at the time it can feel like it really doesn't matter, and that's a lie that comes in and has the power to kind of stop you from creating, I think, and to stop you in your tracks.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is probably being watched by people who have some kind of interest in creativity and in
Yeah.
putting things out into the world. And what would you say to someone who is just starting out on that journey or somewhere along the journey?
Yeah, I think for a start, create,
Yeah,
create stuff. Just whatever it is. If you love drawing, just draw,
yeah,
and then don't be afraid to put it out there. And that's the beauty of something like Instagram, isn't it? That you can just stick it up there, and it's not necessarily about, like with anything, like how many likes you get or how many followers. I'm learning it's more about the interaction and the relationship than it is
yeah,
about the numbers, because I can scroll down my feed and just like, but it's the people who respond to me or message me are that the ones that I really. So I'll give you a
yeah.
really good example. There's a lady in the States called Maddie. She's a designer,
Mm.
cartoonist, and somehow she messaged me on Instagram, or I saw her work and liked a piece of work. I don't exactly know how it started, but then we somehow from time to time dropped each other a message, to the point where I saw some of her cartoons. I was like, I love it. Would you be up for maybe getting involved in doing a cartoon for a release that I'm doing? She ended up doing a massive cartoon strip of a release of a remix with my friend Fez, and did the artwork for it, then designed some merch for me, then designed some
Wow.
more merch for me just for my Patreon followers. And now I would call her my friend who's part of Pyramid Park in some way. Now, all she did was she just put up her content. She was a student just finishing uni and then sticking up some work on her profile relatively regularly. She had a style. She's probably not everyone's cup of tea, but I liked it.
Mm.
And she just kept on producing stuff. And I think that's it. You just stick stuff up and you build relationship with people, and you engage with what other people are doing as well, not being threatened by them. Try not to be threatened by people's relative success, because it always looks better than what it actually is generally. um, and just keep creating, and one day you may just find you have, like you say, a body of work that someone will stumble upon and like and
Yeah,
contact you about and asking for a collaboration or something else.
yeah,
And then be ready to come back with, like, if they say, and what's your fee, and you're like,
yeah.
do you know what I
That's the
mean?
whole thing. Yeah, you have to kind of at that point know your worth. Like you
Exactly.
can't then turn around and be like, oh, what, whatever you want to give me because I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
thankful for the opportunity. Like that's when you step in and go, I've been doing this for a long time and my art has value because you've reached out to me.
And my art has
um
value because of all the
yeah,
stuff I've done along
yeah,
the journey that
yeah.
has added to me being this good at something. Or yeah.
For sure. Yeah, that's so good, Pete. We're gonna wrap it up in just a second. I like
Sure.
to finish chats like this with three quick fire questions.
Oh, go on then. I like that.
So are you ready? Because I'm a
Yeah.
youth worker at heart. So, Pete, if you could collaborate with any artist, living or dead, who would you collaborate with?
Freddie Mercury.
Oh, why Freddie?
I just love his voice.
Yeah, and Stella.
Mm.
Um, what color is your toothbrush?
Green and white.
Green.
Mm.
And if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would you eat?
Oh man, that is hard. One food for the rest of my life. I'm gonna go with apples.
Apple. Oh,
Mm. Yeah,
healthy.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, but
very good.
apples make me really hungry, so maybe not. I don't know. I was gonna say bread, but it'd have to be. I like cornbread, but
Oh, that's a
yeah.
good shout. Yeah.
But anyway, apples and cornbread together.
Apples and cornbread. There you go. What a combination.
I know.
Pete, it's been so good to chat to you. And
Thank you.
yeah, I hope if you're watching, you found this helpful. Pete, if people want to connect with you online, how do they do that?
Pyramidpark.net is my website. All my merch is pyramidparkshop.com, and then just search Pyramid Park everywhere else. I'm everywhere pretty much apart from Snapchat.
You are. I am Heather. I run the I Am Project. So I Am Project UK on Instagram and Facebook. And come and have a conversation with us. Shoot us a message and ask us a question if there's anything that's come out of today's chat. We're both friendly and we'd love to say hi. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Pete, and we'll see you soon. Bye everyone. Bye.